And now it says I'm live. Hello, Allison Verhalen here, coming at you live for today's. We're going to call this Marketing Monday. I want to talk to you about something that I've actually been meaning to cover for a while, and it's one of those things that kept getting pushed to the back burner until just now. So I want to help you make sure that your content passes the so what test. Why do people care, right? I have struggled with this myself, right? And I think a lot of us struggle with this when it comes to explaining why people should care about what we do because we are so in it and it's so obvious to us why it's so important that we have a hard time. We think it should just be obvious, right? We're like, well, obviously blogging is important because of all these reasons that we know all about, but not everyone knows about that stuff, or not everyone sees things quite the same way. I can't remember what my I have changed my 30-second intro so many times it's not even funny. And the one time I got a professional to help me work through it and improve it, I gave her my 30-second that I had come up with up to that point, and she said, "So what? Why do I care?" And I was stunned because I was like, isn't it obvious? Isn't this what everyone wants? And she's like, no, actually, not really. You have to be more specific. So that was a real wake up call to me about understanding, like I said, what I know and how I view things versus how my audience views things. They can be very different. So the same thing goes for your marketing content. Anytime you create content for your business, you have to put the people you are writing for or making a video for or an infographic for, you always have to put them front and center because that's the only way you're going to draw them in so that they actually consume your content, right? So you have to answer the question, so what? Which sounds great. Okay, Allison, thanks for telling me that. How do I do that? What is this so what test? How do we make sure that my audience really cares? First and foremost, make sure it is useful or interesting and relevant to what you provide, right? So that's three different categories. I stole this little flow chart. You can see it on my, I'll put a link to this blog post in the video, this companion blog post that I have, and you can see the flow chart, or you can see it on Austin Kleon's website because I stole the this little flow chart from him. Austin Kleon, if you don't know him, he is the author of Steal Like an Artist and Show Your Work, both of which are awesome books. Highly, highly recommend both of them. But his flow chart is when you're, deciding whether or not you should share something, ask yourself, is it useful or interesting? If the answer is yes, go ahead and share it. If the answer is no, toss it. If you're not sure, save it for later. Maybe do a little bit of research. Maybe just think about it a while, when you kind of let something sit on the back burner for a while and then you come back a day or two later, a week or two later, and you look at it with fresh eyes. It can be easier sometimes to look at it and go, oh yeah, this is useful or interesting, or no, it's not. Or, maybe it's not useful or interesting right now, but I can kind of work with it and finagle it until it is something that is useful and or interesting and relevant. So like I said, Austin Kleon talked about useful or interesting, both very important. I will add a third caveat to that and say that it has to be relevant to what you're providing. It can be, we all love the puppy pictures, right? And the kitty photos and the videos and all of that. I'm a pet owner, a dog lover, an animal lover. I absolutely watch those videos, but I'm not buying anything because of those videos. They're just there to make me happy, right? So that's not doing anything to build anyone's business. Not for me, at least. But then again, maybe that's just because I'm not really their target audience. So useful, interesting, and relevant to what you provide. Research your keywords. So having the keywords in and of itself is not enough, but the keywords that people are searching can give you a hint as to what they care about. So for example, I had a blog post and another video a while back about content distribution. So you can look that up again, either on this channel, on my website, avwritingservices.com. So I looked up and found content distribution was a great keyword, right? Or how to distribute content, I think was the keyword. Something about content distribution, right? That's the keyword. What people care about is being proactive about getting their content in front of people until Google figures out which searches to match your content with and where to rank you. So SEO can be, I mean, it's active, right? You can't just create content and expect Google to figure out what you're doing. There are things that you actively have to do to improve your searchability. But it's still, at the end of the day, you're still waiting for Google to do its thing. And Google, again, has lots of bots doing this, and it's trying to get faster at doing this. But there is a ton of content out there. It takes a while for Google to crawl and index your content and figure out which searches to match you with. So until that happens, you got to figure out a way to be more proactive about getting your content in front of its target audience, right? So content distribution was the what. Getting your content in front of its target audience faster is the why. This is the why should people care. What are the stakes, right? So I talk about storytelling all the time and why it's so important, because that's what engages people. We are primed to engage with stories. We are primed to relate to stories and remember stories. That makes you really memorable. Stories are also great because a well-told story just kind of naturally introduces the stakes. So as an example, I have quit so many TV shows because I just did not care about the characters. It's like, you know what? I don't actually care what happens from here. So the show for me failed to answer the so what question in a way that I found satisfying. I was like, no, actually, this is not convincing me that this is worthy of my time when there's so much other content I could be consuming, right? So think about it that way. Answer that question of what are the stakes? What is going to happen if people don't solve this problem? This is, again, something I talk about all the time in marketing. You have to know the problem you're solving for your clients. You have to know what will happen when that problem is solved and what happens if that problem does not get solved. What happens if things get worse? How will, answering that question, solving that problem, make your audience's lives better? Those are the stakes. And that has to be front and center. That's the intro to the story, right? Is Cinderella is the one that I always use when I talk about the example that I always use in creating stories for marketing content, right? So if she doesn't, run off and live with the prince and live happily ever after, the alternative is she's going to be stuck living with her evil stepmother and stepsisters as a scullery maid for the rest of her life, right? Not the end of the world, but really, really not great. I mean, that compared to living as a princess in a palace, there's no real comparison there, right? I think almost everyone knows what they would choose. So those are the stakes, and it's introduced right away at the beginning of the story. So think about what are the stakes? What is going to happen to your people if they don't solve this problem? And then keep digging. So, going back to that example of content distribution that I went over just a few minutes ago, asking the so what question once is not always enough. You have to keep asking it, right? So that conversation could look a little something like, why should I care about content distribution? Well, because it can help drive traffic to your website. So what? Well, more traffic equals more conversions. So what? More conversions equals more money. And that's the answer. That's what you've just gotten down to. I'm not saying it always comes down to money, right? There are a lot of reasons that people do what we do and we buy the products and services that we buy. Money is a big one, especially if you're in a B2B space, especially if you are working in a B2B space where there are multiple people involved in the buying decision, right? You can hook them on the emotion. You can convince them on the emotion, and you absolutely should, but they're going to use logic to try and justify that. And that means they're going to ask about the numbers, right? So if you can convince them that, hey, this is going to improve your bottom line, they're going to be that much more likely to approve that decision to go ahead and buy your product or service. So keep digging, keep asking, so what? What happens if I do this? Well, this will happen. Okay, so what? And then just keep asking that until you get to the reason, the real motivating factor that will get people to buy your stuff, or at least keep reading. At the very least, keep them reading, watching your video, whatever that might be. So that is it. That is everything that I have for you today. Nice short video. The blog post is also pretty short. If you want to go check that out, that is over on my website, AV, as in my initials, Allison Verhalen. That is avwritingservices.com. That is it for me. Have a great week and happy blogging, everyone.